by Jenner to look away, it's Slack. And then he's bounced it through for a second.
Wow! Look at this. He ran past 10 of them and kicks one of the best goals you'll see this year.
The mark of the year just about. Brilliant gather. Can he finish? Yes. That is a wonderful kick.
You play one bad day, it defines all that went before and sets the parameters for the new quest. So with Sydney Swans, that's the reality. Derm, what's the sense of urgency like for the Swans, do you think, to win this flag?
Well, they sold the farm. I mean, they've got, of anybody who's, I suppose, gone from club to club that's not a new franchise, he's the super wage. Buddy Franklin, you know, close to $2 million. They did the $1 million deal the year before for Tippett. They've sold the farm to win a premiership. And they got soundly beaten up. The two major games over the last season and a nibble was against Fremantle over there in the preliminary, and they got beaten up, and they got beaten up the same way by Hawthorn.
So where do you see them this year in their attempts to win the flag? Because for the first year they were unable to go to the trade table and bolster their stocks, as they've done each and every year.
I still think it's a great time to be a good team, and they're a super team. They're a super team. So the top three, they will beat 15 other teams, given that they all play at their best. They'll beat 15 other teams as long as their butts are pointing to the ground. But the two teams that can really apply pressure to them, throw in the odd one like Fremantle, who can maybe find that pressure. If you've got the goods to shut them down, shut down the space on that midfield, physically knock them around and physically stop their running, talented key back line, they won't get the ball forward.
That's been the issue. They've been bashed up in the last two final series with Fremantle in 2013. Bashed the Swans up and knocked them out of the finals. 2014, of course, grand final day. Hawthorn bashed the Swans up. So they've been the two most comprehensive losses for the Swans, which has been un-Sydney-like, hasn't it, the last 2 years.
Well, their defending backmen are, if they were wrestlers, you'd call them jobbers. They're really good jobbers. They do a job, but they're no stars. Their star backmen are attacking backmen. So they're the ones you attack. You force them to defend. And that's not what they like.
That's why I put guys like Leroy Jetta there now to cover the loss of Nick Malcheski.
That's huge. The Malcheski loss can't be undersold. Number one player in the competition for effective disposals across the ground last 2 years. So he's been their best finals player.
Good meterage on every play.
He's been their big game performer. You just can't replace a player like that. And I think they'll go through 4 or 5 players throughout the year looking for that replacement.
I think the skipper McVeigh will be the one that is designated with that responsibility. But I've spoken to a lot of supporters of the Swans, and they're asking the question about that inexplicable commission decision to stop them training. Has that decision cost them a chance at another flag? Now, I think in some ways it probably cost them patful. They need to bolster, and they should have bolstered their defence. But the commission can't cop all the whack, even though it was one of the most unjust decisions I've seen from the AFL Commission, embarrassingly so. But they had the opportunity to pick up a rookie, and one of them is Mitch Brown, and he has been one of the stars of the competition for the Bombers. They could have picked up a Matty Warnock just to have somebody extra there in case Grundy or Richards goes down. Laidler hasn't actually cemented his spot in the side there.
Because you don't think Reid can do it?
Well, I think Reid may need to play up forward. I think they should have experimented more with Reid, even when they were in Coffs Harbour and Buddy wasn't there. I would have still played him as a centre-half back and just given him more game time in the next
They've been tremendously reliant on Ted Richards and Heath Grundy, who've done an amazing job over the last few years. But they are ageing, aren't they? And so they're very reliant on those two guys to stay healthy throughout the year.
It's small margins, though. There's not a lot wrong, but is there enough...
Agreed, they're top three.
Is there enough improvement season to season to actually go past those teams you're talking about, in particular the Hawks?
Well, what about the head-to-head duel with the Hawks? Because they look like Sydney's kryptonite.
They are. They've lost 5 of the last 6. They just can't simply stop the Hawks from scoring. It's obvious when you look at the numbers. You know, against the competition over the last 2 years, they defend brilliantly. Second best in the competition, conceding 69 points. But against Hawthorn, that flares out to 110. That's a 7-goal difference. The way they play just opens them up. It puts Richards, Grundy, these lesser defenders around the edges to the sword one-on-one, and they just can't cope.
Well, Nick Smith's the only one that's a real shutdown defender there. They're more reliant on running defenders who are a little bit looser when it comes to a one-on-one
And that's why you
contest.
attack them.
Yeah.
The thing that I find disturbing is, and I've seen 60-70% of Buddy's games, statistically, he'll have had better games than last year's grand final. I think that is the best game I've seen Buddy play, and they still didn't win.
He kicked 79 goals last year. Can he improve? Can he do any more than that?
I think he had a better start. I thought he was a little bit slow early. I think
he's had a great pre-season.
He has, save for getting KO'd a couple of days ago.
Right. Well, he'll come back from that.
Tippett kicked 34, so it's almost as a duo. Can they do more?
I think Tippett can do more.
You want 50 to 60.
Tippett hasn't delivered yet. Let's be honest. Tippett has yet to provide the Swans with the season-defining, career-defining season for the Sydney Swans. He should be top three in the best
from $1 million wage?
Well, forget the wage. That's just a circumstance.
Well, that's what you're paying him for.
I understand it. Hasn't delivered that. He needs to go into the ruck. He needs to be their Paddy Ryder, if you like. Dominant ruckman, help fix up the defence by helping the midfield, like Shane Mumford did, and go forward and still contribute big goals.
Well, I think it's been a bit underrated. The loss of Shane Mumford's been huge for Sydney. And you're right,
You're big on this, aren't you?
Yeah, I am. You know, it's been big. He's the real heartbeat of the team there. I think he gave him first use. He gives them a lot of grunt, and I think we saw that in the grand final last year, where Hawthorn absolutely smashed Sydney on the inside. You know, Hawthorn's ruckman gave the Hawthorn inside mid, first use of the ball all day. And I don't think Martin Pike has got that same presence that Shane Mumford has. So therefore, you're right, Kurt Tippett needs to go and play in the ruck a bit more because he's got the jumping ability to get over the top of the opposition ruckman. The guys like Hale and
But Mumford plays angry. They don't have an angry player in there now. They've got tough, hard blokes. So Hanbury's tough and a wonderful, wonderful player. The same with Kennedy, but they don't play angry. Kieran Jack does a bit, but he doesn't really, let's be honest, bash up anyone in the middle there. But Mumford did. You've swung me the way you're thinking there. But they're still a superb team.
Is it time to play Tom Mitchell?
Absolutely. I think that they need to get some more A-grade talent. They lost that grand final in the middle, and I'd be addressing the middle. Tippett in, Tom Mitchell in. I'm surprised to see him still getting limited time through the pre-season. They've got to make a decision on Tom Mitchell. They've got to play him. They've got to find out what he's got.
Well, why don't they?
I don't know what the issue there is. Maybe he's focusing on defence, etc. But I look at Sam Mitchell and I say, now, here's a guy that knows his role. He's a ball winner, he's a ball getter, and he's a creator. I see a young Sam Mitchell in Tommy Mitchell. But he's got to be given the opportunity. And I think the Swans have got to back him into that. And I know they've got some great talent in there. To me, McGlynn is your Piawapolo. He's not an inside mid. Get him up the forward line, let him play to his strength, hard and tough, keep the ball in, kick some goals.
But for that to happen, Hanbury needs to become an elite player. He had a poor pre-season last year.
So you don't think he is already?
He's not ranked elite in the champion data perspective.
I look at him
He is an elite talent.
Yeah, I look at him and say...
he needs to be a top liner. He needs to be in the top 10 in the competition next year.
He's the one I worry about. In the grand final day, he was the one I looked at and went, gee, they've got to shut down this bloke. And they did too. You don't think they targeted him?
Well, that's part of being an elite player. You get targeted.
That's why he is already. So I think he's elite.
He didn't have an elite season. He didn't finish in their top 10 the best.
It's all about consistency, elite, isn't it? You can have big games, but you've got to do it week in, week out, season in, season out.
At the other end of the age spectrum, boys, I think the midfield needs to be bolstered a little bit by Adam Goods. At his age and his games experience, can he go into the midfield and play large chunks in there? The inside mid on the wing.
I'm not with you there. I think Goodsy, just get him through to September.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't dismantle this forward line. The forward line is one of their great strengths.
Yeah.
And whilst he'll play high,
Yeah.
I think if you're going to play Tippett in there and you're going to experiment with Reid in defence, you've got to keep some of your bigs down there.
I'll ask you a question. Do you need to change the way you play, your method, because one team you simply can't compete against? It's not that they can't.
Well, you're playing for
beat
second if you don't.
That's if the first get there.
What do you hope? Do you have to look at the way they play, or do they say, well, you know what, 19 wins, 16 wins, 19 wins the last 3 years is good enough?
I think the one thing they would like to address, and I hope they're addressing, is they're fine in defence. Their midfield runs so well defensively. They're world class, if you like. But bringing the ball in, if you take away the run and the gun, I think they need to address how they use their tools. Too often they go in with no reward. And it's one of the great weaknesses, I think, given them a level of talent they've got in there.
See, I reckon their defence is the root of the problem and the attacking defenders. Because if you're a talented forward and their nemesis, Hawthorn, talented forwards, walk out and go, this is the defence, he's an attacker, I'm going to make him defend. And I reckon that's where it starts.
You've posed a lot of questions about them for a man who says they're guaranteed top 3.
No, but They're top 3 out of 18 teams.
Yeah.
They will 95% beat the other 15 teams. As you're saying, to change your game, or the 15 wins is good enough. They'll beat the other 15 teams 90% of the time. And that'll give them enough wins to be top 3. But they don't have the style that's going to hurt. They do. They can beat them. They'll probably beat Hawthorn 1 out of every 5 games.
I think the one thing about the Swans, and they're so exciting, it was just such a great turnaround for footy last year, but they had a guy called Luke Parker jump from 40 to absolute elite. They need another couple of the young kids to do that. They need young Zach Jones to come in and have a presence. Isaac Healy to jump up and have
he do it in one
first year that is
That's
rising
Chris
star.
Judd, like you want him to be Chris Judd effect on the
He needs to be a significant contributor. Tom Mitchell's the man. Hannanbury's the man. If they can be in there vying for their top 4 and their best and fairest, they've got a significant uplift.
You're right about that progression. You've got Lloyd, Rowan, Cunningham and young Brandon. Jack played in the grand final last year. Can they progress? Because they do. They need a couple of A-grade kids coming through. They desperately need that.
Final question, and you'll get your own feedback at #FoxFootyBigCall. And you can take this first, Gerard. Is which medal will Buddy be wearing at season's end?
Well, he might not have any of them. Kingy doesn't.
No medals.
Kingy doesn't think he's the best forward in the business.
Yeah.
Given the way he started marking the ball in the last month of football, if that's there for good, he'll win the Coleman.
Buddy, it was a good chance to have the Brownlow and the Coleman. He's had a good pre-season. He had no pre-season the year before, and he still.
Is it true that you think he could kick 100 goals?
I think he could kick 100 goals if Tippett can have a good year and spread the defence a little bit. So,
if you're a goal kicker, Sydney cricket ground is the best place to play.
That's right.
Which medal, King?
Well, this is the problem. If you're set up for Buddy to win the Coleman, you don't win the flag. Hawthorn have shown you that. Hawthorn moved the problem from Waverley to the SCG.
So which medal?
If he wins the Coleman, they don't win the flag.
You kicked
Answer the question.
Your Honour, could we please direct the witness to answer the question?
And he still won the flag.
I think they're a lock for top 4, but in my opinion, they're no hope to win the flag.
No medals for Buddy. That's how I couldn't interpret it any other way. Port Adelaide next. They're on the rise.